Welcome to Rooftop Perspectives, inspiring Christ followers to join Jesus in his mission in their everyday lives.
Merry Christmas. Welcome to Rooftop Perspectives. I'm Michael Brewer, and this is John Whaley. Merry Christmas, John.
Merry Christmas, Michael. And I tell you, as this is being aired, Christmas is getting really close.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm excited. I can hear jingle bells almost on the roof already.
Hey, me too, brother. I love Christmas. It's my favorite season of the year. And this today's podcast is all about Christmas.
Oh, gosh, yes. And we're glad you've joined us today on Rooftop Perspectives. Our prayer every week is God's going to use Rooftop Perspectives to inspire you as you join Jesus in his mission where you live, work, and play. And during this Christmas season, of course, you can see in the background there, joining Jesus at Christmas has been our emphasis this season. And the last two episodes have focused on how to connect with your neighbors during the holidays. And today we are kind of shifting our focus. If you're a parent or a parent figure, you may be a grandparent raising your grandkids as the primary. We're going to be sharing some things with you on how to connect with your children, how to help them to learn in new and creative ways. And when we say new and creative, that's kind of interesting because this is an older creative way to do it. Most of you are too young to remember when there wasn't television, when the main form of entertainment in the home was sitting around the radio and listening to stories as they evolved on the radio with special effects sounds and special things going on, great storytelling, great characters, all of that used to be the entertainment for the family. Well, today's guest is going to talk more about how listening to stories is still a wonderful and powerful way for children to learn. Yeah. Parents, listen to this, especially at Christmas time. What a great time today. We're going to share some things with you. John, introduce our guest.
Well, Michael, today we are joined by Dr. Cynthia Tobias. Dr. Tobias is a best-selling author and featured frequently on Focus on the Family's Best of Broadcasts. She has authored 14 books, is a featured guest on radio and television, as well as a popular speaker, being invited to speak to a variety of audiences across the United States and literally around the globe. She's a mother of twin sons, now young adults, and she and her husband, Jack, live in Washington State. And recently, we sat down and had a conversation about children, the way they learn, and a new podcast called Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, which is a powerful retelling of the holiday classic, which is, Michael, my favorite of all the holiday classics. I don't know how many times I've watched it and different variations of it and listened to it. But this is a great retelling of this holiday classic for the entire family. And a great way to talk to your kids about God's grace, God's mercy, his love, his redemption, transformation. And so I just want to invite you to sit back and listen closely. This is one of our shorter interviews, but Dr. Tobias can say a lot in 14 minutes. And then Michael and I are going to come back and talk about the podcast more and talk about some of the things that she said about how children learn. And so sit back and enjoy this conversation with Dr. Tobias.
Now, you have right about 20 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and begin, and then I can always edit when you send me the actual recording. Well, Dr. Tobias, it is so great to have you today with us on Rooftop Perspectives. Thank you for taking time to join me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited about this conversation, of course, about this wonderful podcast, Scrooge, the Christmas Carol. But first, before we talk about that and some of the other things that we want to discuss today, tell us a little bit about Dr.
Well,
Cynthia Tobias, your journey to faith, your family, God's calling on your anything you want to tell us.
All right. Well, I'm a preacher's kid. My dad was a preacher, evangelical preacher, and I started out my career I went to Northwest Nazarene University in Nampa, Idaho, became a teacher, taught public high school for 8 years, Real, just in a nutshell, every summer when I first started teaching, I thought kids would be really excited to learn because I was so excited to teach, and it turned out they weren't. And so every summer I'd go back and work temporary jobs just to see if the high school kids I was teaching, were we teaching them what they needed to really deal with the world. And I found out you get in trouble for most of the things you got hired for. So, people who want, for example, maybe you, John, you get talking too much for social interaction, high energy levels, all that. And so I began my search for how to teach them better. And at Seattle Pacific University, I found a program about learning styles, which is how your mind is wired and how to use your strengths to accomplish things. And I got a master's degree in that. And it was a wonderful discovery and opening. It led me to writing books. Actually, my first book was as a result of just having a lot of parent-teacher meetings and things with kids, and Focus on the Family called me and said, "We've heard about learning styles. We'd wondered if you wanted to write a book for us." And I said, "Let me think about it." Yes. And that was The Way They Learn, which was 30 years ago next year. And it's still doing well. People still use it. But it was, and part of that public school teaching ability, I was also a police officer. I did that for about 6 years, part-time evenings and weekends in the school year, full-time in the summers. I didn't arrest the kids I taught, but I got a whole new perspective on a lot of things being a law enforcement officer. And then back in about 36 years ago, I went full-time into speaking and writing. I have my 16th book coming out next year. So, you could say I was either real varied or I couldn't hold down a job, but either way, I love what I do. And I love working with all ages of kids and parents and teachers. It's just an incredible privilege for me that God gave me this message, and I give him full credit for that.
Amen. That's a great background. And I love I've been reading some of the things that you are passionate about. And I know one of the things that you are passionate about is helping parents connect with their children through just creative new ways and how to learn, and especially through listening, through audio learning, like we do through podcasts. Talk to us about the power of audio learning in the life of a child, and what are some of the benefits to listening to a story in contrast to watching it on a TV screen?
Well, one of the reasons I was really excited about this Scrooge podcast was I thought, not only does it bring together just a high quality presentation, but the actors themselves are not only familiar, but really they do such a phenomenal job with accents, with all the sounds and the noises, and it brings it to life. And like you said, kids are, they don't have to use their imagination if they're watching movies and video and games and all the things that are typical, which was why I was so excited to see this podcast, because it really kind of brings to life again a child's imagination, even an adult's imagination. I've listened to it multiple times, and my husband happens to be very auditory. And when we talk about auditory learning, it means learn by hearing, not only hearing, but also by hearing yourself talk. And so when you listen as an auditory learner, it brings the story to life, but it also gives you a chance to sort of mimic it. My husband, as soon as he heard it, with the wonderful accent they have, I thought, he's going to start speaking with this accent for the next several hours. And that's true. My son is very auditory, same thing, just picks right up on the verbal cues, and it comes to life in inspiration when they can talk, and when they can listen to someone talk, and they can listen to the sound effects and have to use their imagination to figure out what they're talking about. And it's done a great job. I really love the podcast.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. I've listened to the entire podcast, probably will listen to it again and again and again, because the Christmas story, that is my favorite story.
Yes.
The favorite of all times at Christmas, and they did such an incredible job. Sean Astin, the voice of Scrooge, for a minute there, I had to really listen because he did it so well. He didn't sound like Sean Astin. He just changed his voice up to be the part of Scrooge. So let's let's talk about the podcast, this incredible Christmas podcast. Tell us about this fresh adaptation of this historic classic story that we've listened to and read about and watched for years.
Well, some of my favorite things about it is, as you say, Sean does an amazing job. They all do. It's just powerfully done. But one of the things I really like about it is what's woven through it is fresh and yet timeless inspiration about forgiveness and redemption, and the idea that, someone as mean and as seemingly unredeemable as Scrooge, you pick up this time on his sister and his nephew and others. And why are they giving him the benefit of the doubt? Why are they still believing in him even when he obviously doesn't deserve it? And I like that kind of angle. And another thing I like, John, is the idea that I'm a kind of, in other words, what person, and I get a little restless if I have to listen to too many long words that I'm going to have to figure out. Wait a minute. Okay, I'm a smart person. I know what they mean, but I kind of lose the heart of the story, right?
Yes.
So this is a classic that's done in ways that it just keeps you right with it. And I love that it's divided into the 4 segments, because I also have a relatively short attention span, as a lot of kids do. And each segment's less than a half an hour. So I could listen with children, and then ask questions afterwards and give a break in between, or even a day or two in between. And it kind of adds to the richness of the story to have the pieces of it that come together in the end.
Yeah, one of the things I really, really liked about it is how it did highlight those themes of hope and redemption and forgiveness, which is all throughout the classic story. But I love how they retold it in a way that brought that to the surface more, which creates some great conversations. As you talk about, what's happening with Scrooge, what's happening with Bob Cratchit, the nephew, and I love how they tied all of that together in this fresh retelling of this amazing story that I've watched probably 10 or 10 different adaptations over my lifetime. And but I love, I'm an audio learner. I love podcasts. I love stories. I love listening to stories. It's amazing. It's almost like we're going back to the day we used to all gather around the radios years ago to listen to radio together. And people are coming back to podcasts and listening to stories again instead of watching them, which I think is much more effective. I enjoy it. I enjoy it thoroughly. As families come together this season and children, and they begin listening to this together, what are some of the ways that this benefits them? What are some of the benefits of listening to this podcast? You've mentioned a few of them, but what's some of the benefits?
I like the idea that we can discuss it together. And one of the things, we put together some discussion questions, actually, if you want just sort of discussion starters. There's a number I think the number is 67, if you text to 67101, and just some discussion starters that'll give you an idea for even more questions from there. But even for younger children, you can kind of ask them, why do you think he didn't give up on him? And why do you think his sister, so I think, like you, I've heard, it seems like hundreds of versions of Scrooge, but this one, it brought to light different dimensions of the story that I hadn't really ever seen fleshed out before. And so I would say, and for kids, even like I say, young kids, it's like having a story read to you in many ways. Even if you're a toddler and you're sitting on your mom's lap listening to part of this podcast, you're able to kind of figure out and get kind of drawn into the story, which is very valuable.
It is. And I love the fact, again, like you said, it is short. I mean, 25 to 30 minutes per episode. Right. And it does keep your attention. I mean, it's got a great pace to it. And so you don't wander. I mean, you want to know what's going to happen next. And I think for children, they like that fast pace. It's not a slow dragging story, and all the voices and all the noises and all the sounds, it just makes it come to life. And I really, really enjoyed that. And definitely when we air this, we're going to share that number where they can text and they can get those conversation starters because I think, at this time of year, families are looking for something. What can we do together?
Right.
And this gives them something unique, opportunity to sit down together as a family and listen to this amazing story about Ebenezer Scrooge and the story of his redemption as he comes to realize what the true meaning of Christmas is. And again, very, very well done. How can people listen to the podcast?
Well, it's on all the podcast places, Apple, Spotify, all the podcast places. And if you want more information or want to kind of track down some background and things, you can go to, I believe you can go to scroogepodcast.com. That's kind of where I got started with it, and then kind of went from there. And I think parents are going to be surprised to discover how interested their kids are really going to be. I mean, we did one of our listening sessions was just in the car. Most drives these days are 15 to 20, 25 minutes. So popping that in, and then all of a sudden the car trip is over, and it went quickly, and it's really designed to keep their interest. And I think people will be surprised how much they'll be drawn in and how much they'll want to listen to it a few times.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I found myself driving and getting to my destination and staying in the car because I wanted to finish the episode to find out what happened, how it was resolved, even though I knew the story and I've known the story so well. But I was like, man, it's only got 5 more minutes left. I can stop and listen to the rest of it before I go inside.
That's right.
And that's the kind of stories I love. And I know this is going to be a great, great classic for kids to listen to. And I really appreciate you, creating those questions. I've already been sharing this with some of my friends and saying, you need to listen to this with your kids. And here's how you can get some questions and really spend some time, because it's going to give you a great conversation piece for the holidays, because we're doing this series right now called Enjoying Jesus at Christmas. And so when they reached out to me and said, would you like to talk to Dr. Tobias about Scrooge, A Christmas Carol? I was like, definitely, because this fits in another way for parents to find a way to talk to their kids, not just about this great story, but all the themes in the story that tie into the gospel and to the story of Christmas and the coming of Jesus. So it's just a great opportunity this Christmas.
And I don't know about you, John, but the way it ended, the last few sentences were just really, they leave you with a really powerful impact. It doesn't hit you over the head or anything, but it pulled it in and ended it in a way that I hadn't heard it before. And I think to me, it was very touching the way it was. Those last few sentences were really, really good.
Yes, they brought out some new ways to look at the story. Right. And really experience all that Scrooge was going through, even his interactions with the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. Even that was the way they retold that and shaped that was just so refreshing, as Scrooge is dealing with his past, and he's grappling with the changes he needs to make. He's resisting, but is giving in. It's really, really well done. But I thank you so much for taking time just to spend a few minutes with me today, as we're just trying to help families this year connect more with their kids and connect more with the Christmas story and the themes of Christmas. And this podcast does an amazing job. So thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Tobias. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas.
It was my pleasure. You too, John, and keep up the great work. You're doing a wonderful ministry.
God bless. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Michael, I love Dr. Tobias. I love her spirit. I love her heart. She's an amazing, amazing lady. And one of the things she said, which I'm so glad she brought out, is that, all of us are uniquely created by God.
Yeah.
And we all have different learning styles. But one of the most effective ways we learn is by listening to stories. Because you think about it, Michael, when you sit down and watch a TV show or a movie, you really don't have to use your imagination much, because everything's there for you. I mean, they fill in all the holes. But when you listen to a story, it brings the story to life. You have to use your imagination. It sparks your imagination, because you begin to have to imagine, what is this looking like right now? What's happening in this scene? And we connect with stories. We love stories. We are a story people. I mean, this is the reason Jesus used stories so often, all the parables, telling stories to get a truth across.
Yeah.
And at Christmas, I mean, we have the opportunity to, first of all, listen to and tell the greatest story of all time, the story of Jesus's birth and why he came. And Michael, isn't it interesting that when it comes to the Christmas story, we would love to hear it than see it? There's something about at Christmas, unlike any other time of the year, there's something about sitting down and somebody reading either Matthew's account or Luke's account of the Christmas story. We want to hear it and imagine what was it like that night. Yeah. So I think there's so much that she said about how storytelling, one, we've lost that in so many ways. Yes. You know, many of you that are watching are very, very familiar with the Andy Griffith Show. But most people forget that Andy Griffith began his career as a storyteller. That's what he was known for. He was an amazing storyteller. I mean, people would come just to hear Andy Griffith tell stories at events. But now there's new podcasts. So Michael's going to talk about that is bringing back this story. And by the way, there are more podcasts that are doing this that are stories. And so it's almost like we're going back to the old radio days in the new radio is podcasts. But Michael, let's talk about the podcast that Dr. Tobias and I talked about, Scrooge: A Christmas Carol.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm like you. I've seen every variation, animation, all the things. I watched the Muppets version of A Christmas Carol. I'm telling you,
I love the Muppets version.
And I would look for it every Christmas. I look for it, and if more than one comes on, I will watch them all.
And me too.
I love it. But boy, when this started, the first thing is when you shared with me about this podcast, I didn't know about it. The first thing I did was I went and I listened to the trailer, and I was hooked immediately. Because the storytelling is so powerful because you're hearing the story come to life. I like to hear somebody read a good story. But when you have the story acted out with the voices and the sound effects and the things, and you begin to feel the empathy or the anger or the frustration or the love, you begin to feel all the things that the characters are delivering to you in their voice and in their inflection and in their tone and in the special effects around it and the music that plays. And Scrooge is probably one of the most effective podcasts for hearing a story evolve. It grabs your imagination. My wife and I were traveling, and we were listening to the podcast while traveling, and she told me, she said, "You got to turn that off because you ain't paying attention to your driving." Because it's so good. And so I tell you, you got to listen to this thing. And what's so powerful about it is that it gives emphasis, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but the themes of forgiveness, redemption, and grace are so highlighted.
They are.
And you hear it as the characters talk to Scrooge and as they talk about Scrooge.
Mm-hmm.
And you as it evolves, you are hearing, and you get to see from this experiencing Scrooge's childhood to what he has to go through. I don't want to tell any part of the story. I want you to go listen to it, folks, on the podcast. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to hear something fresh and new. This adaptation is true to the story, but it highlights from the message of redemption and a message of hope better than any adaptation that's ever been. It's not just in the ending. It's in as it plays it's woven so beautiful all the way through.
Yeah, they nuance it. Maybe that's the word. They take the story and they nuance it. and they bring out things, and this is not a spoiler, but even in all the adaptations, you see, there's always that flashback to Scrooge's relationship with his sister. There's always the he and the nephew's interaction, but in this retelling, it begins to make us look into and ask the question, for example, why they never gave up on him. I mean that, it just kind of nuances that and makes you begin to ask, this is interesting. Why did they never give up on Scrooge? So it's a great retelling of the classic. And I love it because it's only 4 episodes. They're short, like Dr. Tobias and I talked about, 25, 30 minutes each. Yep. And so for kids, it's just a great time frame. It's very intriguing. And it gives you, as a parent or a grandparent, this platform to then have conversations after each episode and to begin to talk about, the themes of what happened and what stood out to you. And then Dr. Tobias, she's made it very easy for us, because if you text the word talk, and I think we have a slide for that. If you text the word talk, the 67101, you will get a link to some questions. She's developed 3 questions for every episode. So after you listen to it, you can sit down with your kids, your family, and you can begin to talk about these questions are designed to spark conversations. And they're really well done questions that begin to make you wonder, okay, so what was Jacob Marley's message to Scrooge? And you begin to talk about all those different nuances. It's just a phenomenal podcast. And Sean Astin does an incredible voice of Scrooge. As I told her in the interview, I had to really listen because Sean Astin is such a great voice actor. It didn't sound like Sean Astin. I mean, he definitely didn't sound like Sam from Lord of the Rings in any way form. But yeah, so good. It was so good.
It captures your imagination, and the questions lead to such really understanding the depth of what you were listening to. Mm-hmm. And it makes you focus. The questions when you do the text thing, the 67101, you're going to just get these amazing questions. And because of how it's done, you can watch part 1. I guarantee you, if you've got an older child that's anywhere like 4th or 5th grade that's listening to this with you, they're not going to be satisfied with giving up on just hearing the first podcast.
Yeah. What's the second episode? Can we go ahead and have our conversation and then listen to more?
Yeah, let's do this and let's watch the next one. I think that will happen. It may be one of those wonderful things, one of these Saturdays after you've gotten all the stuff kind of done and ready. You're kind of ready for Christmas more than you are today. To sit down and just maybe do the podcast, have some conversation. Do the podcast, have some conversation, and it could fill up a day where it's dreary outside and you can't go anywhere and do anything. Oh my goodness! If
you have surround sound speakers, let me highly encourage you to plug that in.
Plug it in. Yeah, I watch the podcast on my smart TV, and I've got surround sound speakers. Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you right now, yes, you hear this. You're in the middle of the whole thing.
It is. We want to give you a taste of this podcast. So we want you to listen to the trailer. We want you to hear this trailer. So let's listen to the trailer of Scrooge: A Christmas Carol.
Hope Media Group is very proud to present an all-new audio experience. Scrooge: A Christmas Carol. Here's a taste.
Merry Christmas to you, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
Jacob, is that you?
I wear the chain I forged in life. Link by link, you will be visited. by three spirits on this very eve.
Memories can be ignored, Ebenezer, but not forgotten.
So, why have you come if you have nothing to say?
Ebenezer, are you going to join us?
Spirit, do not leave me! No questions. Rule number 1 of the present, never question it. Why show me these things if they are not to be? Spirit, help me!
Scrooge, A Christmas Carol is coming soon, wherever you hear podcasts.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna go listen to the whole thing again. I say watch it because I put it on my screen, on my TV for the thing, and it shows that picture of Scrooge the whole time. But I love that. I love that statement, and it's one of the questions that's highlighted. We won't give too much away here. When the ghost of the Christmas present says, rule number 1: no questions in the present.
Yeah,
just
enjoy it. Just enjoy it.
And it's just, I got this big smile on my face because I remember just how much I enjoyed listening to this thing. It is just it's such a powerful, powerful message. And the ending is familiar, but it gets stretched a little into a place that will make you go, wow.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So visit ScroogePodcast.com and you'll find out some great information. And this is one of those things you want to tell your friends and family about and say, hey, I've already put it on social media once, probably will do it again a couple of times, saying you need to listen to this. You need to listen to this with your family. ScroogePodcast.com. Well, thank you for joining us today. Be sure to share this episode with your family and friends. Subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to the Rooftop TV, our YouTube channel, please subscribe and please take time to leave a review. Please. And in the comments on YouTube and Facebook, but also listening to it on different podcast platforms. Leave a review because that really helps people become more aware. If you want to know more about the Rooftop International and the Rooftop North America, visit our website at therooftop.org. The Rooftop is an international ministry committed to making disciples across the globe. We are actively working with the body of Christ in over 65 countries, close to 70 countries now. And so join us in joining Jesus in his mission. And you can discover how to do that by going to the website. And then last but not least, next March is our Discipleship Summit. Caesar Kalinowski will be with us from Everyday Disciple in Dallas, Texas, along with Pastor Sam at Cumberland Fellowship in Crossville, Tennessee. He'll be with us as well. And it's just going to be an incredible 2 days. You can register and come and be with us, or you can register and be online. It'll be streamed, and it'll be also in English and Spanish. And it's going to be an amazing 2 days of learning how do we make disciples who make disciples outside the walls of our church buildings, outside of our comfort zones. And you want to be a part of this 2-day summit. It will bless you. And so we thank you. We hope you have an incredible, incredible Christmas because this is the last Christmas episode before Christmas Day. And so we hope you had an incredible Christmas and a wonderful Christmas Eve. I know one of the things we're doing in our neighborhood on the 23rd is actually having a candle lighting service in our front yard. And we're going to read the Christmas story and sing some carols with our neighbors. It's going to be amazing. And so continue connecting with your neighbors, send out Christmas cards, give them Christmas ornaments, connect with them and create some conversations. And Michael and I just hope you have a great Christmas. And we look forward to seeing you next week on the episode after Christmas on Rooftop Perspectives. God bless. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.